All right. We're doing this YouTube series here on the dry erase board. This is the next installment. If anybody's coming into this installment, every previous installment builds up to this. I'll go ahead and I've just kind of highlighted some points, some talking points, and then I'm gonna go unpack this. I made a video yesterday. I put it at the Advanced Fans of Bernardo Kastrup group on Facebook as to kind of introduce this, and then I thought, well, I'm going to go to the dry erase board and I'm going to double down and actually do a talk on it. What I've got written up here is in the previous videos, I've introduced the philosophical idea of irreducible ontological primitive. That's which all things can be reduced to but no further reductions can be made. So the way this was handled is that perceptual forms, things that you could draw a circle around, something that's an image that seems to be boundaried perceptually. Perceptual images, they can radiate like a house of mirrors. You go do a house of mirrors. Go get some mirrors. It appears that it radiates off into infinity. A Mandelbrot, fractal looks like it reverberates off into infinite regress, perceptually, according to vision. But what people are often overlooking and not considering is that consciousness is a prerequisite to the infinite regressing. Some people are thinking that forms and appearances are fundamental. And they never are. They can't be, because what's fundamental is what's irreducible about all of this. This is going to be the irreducible ontological primitive. That which everything can be reduced into. These are essentially the contents of consciousness. These are the things that consciousness witnesses. Consciousness, primary consciousness, is the ultimate witness of things, of multiplicity, of boundaried perspectives, of infinite regresses. Come here, Gretchen. These are witnessed. Consciousness is always behind the perceiving of any form, the perceiving of any infinite regress. So that should make it clear enough for an explanation. What I was saying that furthers this along a bit is the irrefutable aspect of the irreducible ontological primitive. Lots of big words. I'm going to unpack all that. So this ontological primitive just means that which cannot be further reduced. That's what all the philosophical terms mean. That winds up being something quite irrefutable. This is the argument that's going to be made right now. When that's understood, this is what follows. There's an irrefutability. There's something absolute about this scenario right here that can't be otherwise. There are a lot of things in this world that are not absolutes, that are just relative. There's a lot of partial truths. There's a lot of relative truths. There's a lot of half-truths. There's a lot of things of that nature. But they are all underscored by the absolute, which is consciousness. That's why it's the first principle in Hermetic tradition, and is treated as the first principle in Vedic tradition, in Taoism as well. It's you don't have anything without the ultimate witness. The only, if when we're looking for truth, truth is going to funnel its way down from the many to the one, and the one has to open up as transparent to its own inherent mystery. Existence itself exists as pure mystery. And the mystery is all things. Forms, concepts, images, infinite perceptual regresses. Got to be careful with language right now and terms. This is a perceptual regress. These are perceptual boundaries. Those are always half-truths. And the problem in this world today about truth and truth-seeking and philosophy and mysticism and spirituality and religion, and then the politics and the secular sciences that follow, the wake thereof. Unfortunately, people have their minds only right here, and they're absolutely blind to right here. They're constantly overlooking the substratum. In my very last video, I made an issue of the substratum. We talked about how we go from the blank screen of perception to forms, boundaried appearances, appearing within the absolute, formless and transparent substratum, which is, takes us to the mystery of existence. And it has to be consciousness. Consciousness is what flows from the mystery. The mystery is an absolute, and the absolute is irrefutable. You see what's going on here? It's an irrefutable, irreducible, ontological primitive. This is what's happening right now. None shall pass. You can imagine Abraxas declaring this right there. None shall bloody pass. This is the truth of God. I argued last time, this is the truth of Jesus Christ. This is the truth of Buddha, Krishna, all world sages. This is the absolute truth, put in as simple terms as possible. And available on the internet. Not a big secret. Not hidden from everybody. You go to an AI, check through all this stuff. You know how to prompt an AI correctly, you'll get the correct answers. You know how to search in a search engine, you'll get the correct answers. You got to go deep on the irreducible ontological primitive. You got to go deep on how that impacts the hard problem of consciousness in modern secular philosophy. And you got to contrast that with debating issues and the irrefutability of the irreducible ontological primitive. This is all, somebody could do this from home, double check everything, come up with their own data, figure this out further. Unless you start incorrectly prompting things and getting the wrong answers. But if you did, somebody who can, will just easily look at it and say, oh, you've incorrectly prompted it, and here's what's correct. So feel free to test this stuff. Ask questions. Feel free to do all of it. None shall pass the primacy of consciousness. This is what is essentially meant by the symbolism of God in our world mythologies, and our world religions are built on the backs of primitive mythologies. The psychological soil for all of this is the early mythologies. And they're about consciousness. It's the way that inward consciousness is expressing itself outwardly as world mythology. Did you hear somebody out there? Okay. Got a little puppy guarding the house. Now, the primacy of consciousness is irrefutable because refutations get stuck with the hard problem. No one can explain the existence of conscious experience, the ultimate witness that is witnessing many different things and boundaried perspectives. Can't be explained at all without this. This is what's making this irrefutable. Just to be clear, why I've written irrefutable and why I'm holding this position. As clear can be made, and as clear as I make it, there will always be somebody who doesn't see it clearly, and that's okay. It's part of the learning curve. But there will be. So I mean, I'm going to go to pains to make this simple, and even so, I realize it still won't be understood. And to some, that may seem futile, but it really isn't. There are going to be some people, at least, that do get it. So, and it's worth it. It's worth it at the individual level for individuals to get this, even if one by one. It's just, this is a necessary part of the development of the earth and the world, as far as I'm concerned. We go through these, phases of, evolution and social conditioning. They've led to all of this. All of our history has led up to the time we're in now, and confronting all of this head on. This has given us a problem for several hundred years. And it's because the religious authorities had run amok. They had gone from preserving ancient knowledge and trying to do what is essentially the right thing and keep all of this ancient knowledge preserved for future generations. Well, they ran amok along the way, and through the Dark Ages and through the Middle Ages. They ran amok. They were burning free thinkers at the stake. It's totally out of control. And in all of that out of control was born secular physicalism. I'm going to do a real quick history here, just to recap on this. Now, Bernardo Kastrup talks about this often, this history. Philosopher Peter and physicist Peter Russell, who has a great non-dual meditation platform, he talks about this regularly too. The idea is that they were all getting burned at the stake, the natural philosophers, who were the naturalists and scientists of the day, by the church. And it was because it seemed like science was getting too close to what is sacred, which is this. And so they were like guarding this, basically. And it's, the natural philosophers, they caught on to that and then started saying things like, we, the natural philosophers, will concern ourselves with the material world, with this. As for mind, or soul, psyche, spirit, the part of us which is the consciousness, left hemisphere, right hemisphere. As for mind, or psyche, we'll leave that to the church. And that exonerated them from being burned at the stake. Somewhat, that was the little thing that made it so that they could go on with science. This is why we had a scientific revolution, was because of this strategy. So they got this power hungry institutional church system off of their back that was trying to stop and hinder forward progress in science and in thinking and in technology and thought. Well, so they had to do their science without mind, and so they were kind of doing that for a while, and they never recovered from it. The issue is that they were at no point in the history of physicalism has mind and psyche ever been explained, not once, by physicalism. It works to manipulate this and work with perceptual things and the things of the world and the things of the universe the things that appear to be separate, but it completely drops the ball and misses the mark once you get down below that to the substratum level, to the irreducible ontological primitive. What's irreducible in materialism? Nothing. You know, is matter no? You keep reducing, and it appears that you could reduce it infinitely, like an infinite regress. Well, that places it over here, on this side of the mystery mark. It can't get to here. It can't get to the mystery of existence itself, and it can't even get down to the one, really. It can't get to that irreducible through physicalism. And it's dualistic. You've got two things. You've got matter that has a separate existence from mind, and mind is an afterthought that arose out of matter somehow, but it's never explained. It's not, the hard problem is the lack of ability to explain how that happened. People assume that happened. They just think that it happened. They can't prove it, and it can never be formulated into a formal scientific theory the way they have it. This is why once you do get to the ontological it's very absolute, it's irrefutable, and it's very necessary. In terms of an explanatory model, whether it's a mystical ancient explanatory model or whether it's a modern day contemporary explanatory model, we need to treat reality according to the primacy of consciousness. And arguably, even though those corrupt churches did what they did, the concept of God is itself not corrupt. The concept is this. The concept is the truth. God is going to wind up being the truth in the end. You know, spoiler alert. And if you're an atheist, hang with me through the whole thing, because it's not what you think right now. With just me saying those words, you're likely going to think something that's incorrect. You're going to make incorrect assumptions about the way I've just used the term God. God is existence itself, and we're going to correct this right now. Just to be clear on this, if I were to say at any time God, what I mean is existence, and the reason I'm going ahead and calling it God is because it's conscious. Existence itself is consciousness. That is the primacy of consciousness. The loose term, the generic term is God. You know, there's particular gods within the actual myths. There's Yahweh and there's Brahman, and you've got individual gods that represent the supreme aspect of reality according to different cultures. The broad brush term for it is just God. And that's not negative or derogatory to call it a generic term. It is a generic term for a principle that's represented in all cultures according to different names, in other words. It's not irreverent or disrespectful. It shouldn't be. And if you're an atheist, just please understand, we got, going forward in the world, we're going to be looking at it this way. This is, the secular sciences are headed this way. So the spirituality and science is going to become something of an integration. It's already well underway now, and it's only going to get more intense with time, according to my personal projections. It's because of this. It's because of how strong and powerful this is. This isn't something to, it's no light issue, put it that way. The power that comes from this is going to wind up being the power granted from God, essentially. This is knowledge of ultimate reality. This is as much as we can understand about ultimate reality while having the experience of a finite mind, of a personal mind. This is as far as it goes. We can take it until we completely lose it, which is the mystery of existence. And we have to do that. We have to leverage ourselves to the mystery and back, and be able to bounce in perspective from where we lose it to what's conceptual and available to us, which is all of this. The many is conceptual to us. Even the many reducing to one is conceptual, and we can conceive of the one being mystery, but that's where we then lose it. As human beings, as the human mind. Whoever has the highest IQ in the world, doesn't matter. There's going to be, the mystery of existence is absolute to every human being, regardless of IQ, regardless of credential, regardless of status, regardless of anything. This is why it's irrefutable and an absolute. Coming off of that to there, well, there's all kinds of relative truths and partial truths and half truths and kind of, sort of, and this realm. This is the realm of concepts and conceptual thinking. So this is why people get stuck here. This is beyond that. This is when you transcend that to the transcendent realm, which is beyond. It's not nothing. It's just beyond the vibratory experience of this one. This one can be felt, experienced, and understood, but not spoken, not conceptualized. These are different vibrational ranges here, and they don't connect. So that's a way of thinking about it. That's a way of thinking about the transcendent. It's not that it's nothing. It's not that it isn't real. It's reality. It's ultimate reality, and we're just seeing a distorted version of this ultimate higher reality here in this lower vibratory experience of personal mind. And you can get beyond that to impersonal mind, Brahman, Yahweh, the individual supreme gods. The supreme part about it is that they're the ultimate witness. They are consciousness itself. The breath of life is the breath of consciousness itself into inanimate matter, and then the coming alive of consciousness. It's coming from the God. That's why creation myths are orchestrated in that way. That primacy of consciousness. The mankind or humanity is conscious because of this direct extension of what is the God consciousness. That's the way it works out. And atheists need to understand this too, because if you're trying to understand ancient mythology and religions, this is the correct understanding. You got to understand it correctly to address it, or else you're just when you're trying to refute religion and God, and you're refuting straw man, things that have been paraded by false institutions that are incorrect. You're responding to incorrect assumptions. So let's direct the responses to something that is correct, and that's all I can hope for with a talk like this. And the claim on my end is that it's irrefutable. You're not going to get around it. And to get around it, you have to get around this. And good luck to you. I'll stand there. Here's a stick figure. I'll stand there here with a staff. None shall pass this. Person. None shall pass. If nobody you can't get behind conscious experience equals, you can't refute modern idealist metaphysics. Take that. And it's the power of knowledge. It's the power of mind. Mind is God. So it's the power of God. The power of this is the power of God. This is the way this works out. What God really means. What God's real power is. And he doesn't grant it to just anyone. You literally, nobody can get this deep into it if they haven't made amends with their blind egos. It's not that you're not going to be an ego. You will be. And that's could be considered original sin. Something you're not going to get out of until you've passed on and passed out of the physical body experience. But just like Paul and the apostles, you can be an advocate for the Most High as an ego, as a sinner. That's the point. So this isn't about you're going to somehow go to non-ego or not be an ego while alive. You will be. Just as Paul and all the apostles were sinners to the day of their death. But redeemed somehow. This is what we're talking about. by the good faith. And the good faith isn't faith in a history lesson, or I believe that somebody rose and died 2,000 years ago who's separate from me, and if I just believe this history lesson, then I'll live forever and have a bunch of physical jewels in some other place, not here. That you couldn't be farther from the truth. That never was the Christian message, and it's not now. That's my point here, and I made that point in the last talk. The Christian message is a lot more powerful. It goes back to the Father, and the Father is this, and it goes to the ontological primitive, and it goes to the mystery of being. And I and the Father are one. Father is the absolute, is the irrefutable, is the power of primacy consciousness, is all of these things, is the same as Brahman in the East. If you understand how Brahman is understood in the East, then you understand that that's the way we should be understanding Yahweh. Atam, from the Egyptian, from the Hermetica, all of that. Modern idealism, which is in irrefutable territory. The models can shift and change and correct and nuance and whatever they need to do, but they're predicated on the primacy of consciousness, which is itself irrefutable. That means that modern idealism is pretty much beyond being refuted. And a lot of people are naive to this. They don't get it. They don't get it because they haven't gone that deep and they don't comprehend it. Once this is comprehended, then you understand, oh, it can't be refuted. Modern idealism, which is beyond refute, equals ancient knowledge returning, because this thing, the primacy of consciousness, is at the very core of all world religions, which are based on all world mythologies, which are based on the mystery of existence, and that is the mystery of absolute consciousness permeating the immanent realm. The Nicene Creed, I mentioned this in the last talk. God is, for Christianity, that was established at the Council of Nicaea. This was agreed upon by everybody. God is both immanent and transcendent. Immanent within the world of forms, as well as transcendent everywhere to the mystery beyond that. God is the mystery and the matter and the physicality, the appearance thereof. God is all God. This is what is returning as modern idealism. This is the secular world realizing that we took a wrong turn when we had to leave mind to the false church, basically, the false churches that were persecuting people incorrectly, that shouldn't have been happening, caused the hard problem of consciousness to enter secular science. This is the part where secular science realizes this folly and is making moves to amend what was once done wrong. And so it's the return of very ancient knowledge. That's what it is. And that's why it is that. In the West, we regard this as Hermetic. In the East, we regard this as Vedic. And we have different ways of looking at this, but all of the Western esoteric occult uses Hebrew symbols as the language. Yahweh, even older than that, is Aleph, He, Yod, He. Older than all of that is Atam, and this gets highlighted in the book The Hermetica by Timothy Freak. I've got him as a friend. He's a friend of Hermetic Idealism on Facebook, the public page for Hermetic Idealism on Facebook. Timothy Freak is an author, and we talk and stuff on Facebook. I recommend his books, especially the Hermetica. He's got a new ebook out right now. It's really good. A new type of approach that he's airing out on his public page. The Vedic would be Brahman and the way that it's translated throughout all Eastern religions, basically. This is consciousness itself. This is the primacy of consciousness as an ancient mystical, metaphysical model of reality. It deals in terms of symbolism, allegory, and indirect because it's from this realm. Everything here is indirect to the true reality, which is the direct, and which can be understood only through experience itself, through direct acquaintance, through direct experience. Let me back up here a little bit. I'm at the 30-minute mark, so I'm closing in on as far as I care to go on these talks now. I'm going to bring them a lot lower than an hour. I'm hoping that people will, see it. And if it's 30 minutes, it might be better than an hour. So this runs off into, like Hinduism. Well, I won't write it all because this takes time to write, but this runs off into Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, the Eastern varieties of mystical tradition. This is the Western varieties of mystical tradition. They both mean the same very thing: primacy of consciousness. They're on firm footing. When it seems like they're not on firm footing, it's because of dualism. It's because people are using a dualistic mindset to try to discuss things and concepts that are that use dualistic language, terms, and literary creation to direct the mind to hear, to the mystery of the preconditions of its own existence, which is the mystery. And it's absolute. This is a discourse on the absolute truth. And once you arrive here, this is no longer a situation, the world seems like a confusing place. Competition. Everybody has a competitive-minded attitude. Most people, not everybody, I'm broad brushing there, but the rule of the land is competition-based. But there's also cooperation. And, you could go either way. When it comes to one-upmanship and people, when we're talking about mind and the one-upmanship of mind and people being competitive about who's smarter than who knows more than the other, whose metaphysical model is correct, whose religion is correct, whose politics are correct, who's correct. There's a lot of competition involved in that, in politics. In religion and spirituality, there's all kinds of competition between even New Agey spiritual gurus even. There's a lot of, the world is predicated on this competitive mindset where all the individual centers of awareness are, somewhat competing. And there's a purpose for this. It's what drives technology. It's what drives innovation. So this, somehow or another, this must go on. It's not as if we can just X this out. But I have a feeling that it can be done a lot better, and that's if cooperation enters into it. Somehow or another, there has to be this, but it has to be some sort of a cooperative competition and not a bloodthirsty bloodbath. I'm going to end on this. Some sort of an upbeat here, up note. We can have both. Just like in a previous talk, I argued against that all dichotomies are false. And if you just put your mind to it, you can understand what's false about any dichotomy. Well, this makes a dichotomy. It's a false dichotomy because we're going to need to reserve some element of competition. It has to be there. Has to be. For sake of technology and innovation, it must be. But there also must be cooperation. And my plea for this is that when you get to these, this is the responsible part about coming into the knowledge of the irrefutable ontological primitive, or the irrefutable, irreducible ontological primitive. Everybody runs a tie with everybody else when you arrive here. There is not deeper. Deeper gets us beyond the ability of the human mind to conceive of concepts, of words, of language, of thoughts, of maths, of everything. All maths, all thinking, those are concepts, those are symbols. All of these symbols that are maths, that are mythology, that are religion, that are politics, that are our physical looking bodies, are a symbol for the spiritual beings that we actually are inside. That's what the meaning of this is. That's the spiritual core. That's the spiritual message. It's not just that mythology is a metaphor. All of our science is also a metaphor for the true reality that's beyond what we're capable of expressing this way. So, I mean, that's the big point here. Now, once you know this, when you know that inside, you are now running a tie with everybody else in the world who also knows that, who also has come to the very precipice and even experienced, even by direct experience through meditation, psychedelics, and other means, the ultimate reality that is beyond words, but they can't say it when they've returned back because this is a lower vibrational plane that we exist in here in this experience, and that is of a higher. You can know it through experience, but you can't communicate it any way other than symbolically. Metaphor, allegory. This is why our myths are symbolic and allegorical. This is why even our secular standard model for particle physics and cosmology is itself a useful fiction, as Bernardo Kastrup says. It is always a fiction. It is something indirect that we're using to try to point the way towards what is direct, which is the mystery of primary consciousness. So this is how it all breaks down. And if you took this in today and you do understand it, well, today you have run a tie with me teaching it and anybody else in the world that understands this, and you can't go beyond them. It has to turn into cooperation. The competition of one-upmanship and I know more than you and I know a little deeper yet, I know knowledge, taking knowledge further than others, only goes so far. There's a dead end, and this is it. The absoluteness, the irrefutableness of this is the dead end. The mystery is the dead end, and that is the very premise of Joseph Campbell's entire life work, he was trying to get people at the college level to understand this about mythology and religion. He died around 1988. Premature of that ever happening, but all these years later, no, it's maturing. It is. More and more people are able to tie with everybody else who understands this. Joseph Campbell understood this. If you understand this, you tie with Joseph Campbell, the great world mythologist, comparative world mythologist. It is a tie. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The highest credential, the highest authority, the highest mind, the highest IQ, doesn't matter. None of that matters. A normal person on the street corner understands this. They understand as much as a human can understand, and now they're in cooperation with everybody else who understands the same, and it isn't so much a competition anymore. It isn't. The one-upmanship, it all stops here. This is an invitation for people to get to the Holy Land, to get to the Promised Land. This is the metaphorical Promised Land of mind. If you can understand that with your personal mind, you have arrived. Welcome. Fall in rank with everybody else who's also arrived, because this isn't about ego. This isn't about your own personal ego being great and better than it can't be. All it can be is one of the collective and sharing in whatever greatness there is to be gained and gleaned from understanding what's irrefutable, irreducible about reality, which is you, your true self within you. You are the absolute, having a human experience. And I mentioned that in the last talk. I'm going to mention it again. I'm going to mention it over and over until it seems that it's so well known that it doesn't need mentioned. We're not there yet. All right, signing off.